Welcome to this explainer. When you think of European history, your mind probably jumps straight to the massive, sprawling empires of France, Britain, or Germany. But nestled right smack in the middle of them is a relatively tiny parcel of land that has quietly and, well, sometimes very loudly, played an absolutely massive role in shaping the entire continent. We are talking, of course, about Belgium. It's a place that actually transformed from Europe's ultimate battlefield into its modern diplomatic heart.
So how in the world does a country survive being the continent's battleground just to eventually become its boardroom? Let's dive right into this and discover how geography became both a curse and a blessing for Belgium throughout its intensely complex history. Because of its prime location, armies have marched across its plains for literal centuries. Empires have fought over it, kings have ruled it, and revolutions have entirely reshaped it. Yet today, it stands as the political center of the European Union and NATO.
Here's our roadmap for this explainer. We're going to cover the crossroads of Europe, the road to independence, industry and colonial empire, surviving the world wars, building modern Europe, and finally, Belgian culture and identity.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the crossroads of Europe. We're going way back to ancient times here, long before the modern borders of Belgium were ever even drawn. Picture this. Over 2,000 years ago, this land was inhabited by the Belgae. They were these fierce Celtic warriors and farmers who traded with nearby peoples. When the legendary Roman general Julius Caesar showed up during his conquest of Gaul in the 1st century BCE, the Belgae pushed back, hard. They fought so fiercely, in fact, that Caesar famously documented them as the bravest of all the Gauls. Eventually, yes, the Romans did conquer the region and integrate it into their empire, but that brought new roads, expanded trade routes, and the very first cities near what we now know as Brussels and Tournai. Fast forward a bit past the fall of the Roman Empire and the rise of Germanic tribes like the Franks, and we see a massive, dynamic shift. Trade and textiles literally transformed the region into one of medieval Europe's absolute richest areas. During the Middle Ages, the territory was chopped up into these wealthy feudal counties, and the region of Flanders emerged as an economic juggernaut. Cities like Bruges, Ghent, and Ypres exploded into massive commercial centers. You had merchants from England, Italy, and Germany flocking there. Bruges was actually so prosperous, so packed with canals and international trade, that people started calling it the Venice of the North. But look, immense wealth and a central location meant that larger empires were just constantly fighting to control this real estate. Which brings us to Section 2, the road to independence. For centuries, this region was passed around like a strategic puzzle piece between European powers, basically serving as a buffer state. In the 14th and 15th centuries, it was united by the ultra-powerful Dukes of Burgundy, sparking this golden age of Northern Renaissance art. Then it gets handed off to the Spanish Habsburgs. By the 18th century, control shifts again, this time to Austria. And after a brief stint under Napoleon's France, the powers that be in 1815 actually merged Belgium with the Netherlands to create a buffer state against the French. It was just a dizzying carousel of foreign rulers.
Now here's a totally crucial turning point, the 16th century religious split. When the Protestant Reformation swept across Europe, the northern provinces of the Low Countries rebelled against Spanish Catholic rule and formed the independent Dutch Republic, the modern Netherlands. But the southern provinces, which is roughly the area of modern Belgium, remained heavily Catholic and stayed firmly under Spanish control. That religious and cultural division permanently fractured the region. It's really what laid the deep cultural foundations for the country of Belgium we know today.
So let's jump ahead to 1830. All those centuries of tension, especially with the Dutch Protestant leadership they were forced to merge with back in 1815, it finally boils over. Inspired by a wave of revolutionary movements across Europe, Belgian rebels rose up in Brussels and fought off Dutch rule. And it actually worked. By 1831, Belgium officially became its own independent constitutional monarchy under its very first king, Leopold I. They adopted a liberal constitution, a parliamentary government, and civil freedoms, effectively birthing one of Europe's most progressive constitutional states at the time. With independence finally locked down, Belgium rapidly transformed its domestic economy while simultaneously embarking on a deeply controversial overseas expansion. Let's look at Section 3, Industry and Colonial Empire. Belgium didn't waste any time. They became one of the very first industrialized countries in all of continental Europe. In the 19th century, they aggressively doubled down on coal mining and steel factories, and they built one of Europe's earliest railway systems. On top of that, the port of Antwerp grew into one of the world's most vital maritime hubs. But, as you might guess, this massive generation of wealth came at a seriously high human cost. Rapid industrial growth led to brutal working conditions and deep urban poverty.
This, in turn, sparked powerful labor movements and socialist politics that would shape the country's domestic policies for decades to come.
We also have to look neutrally at the historical record of this era's expansion, which is deeply sobering. King Leopold II took personal control over the Democratic Republic of the Congo, running it effectively as his own private colony, calling it the Congo Free State. Historical documents show that the aggressive extraction of rubber and a heavy reliance on forced labor led to horrific abuses, mutilations, and the tragic loss of millions of Congolese lives. The international outrage was so massive that the Belgian government was actually forced to step in and take control away from Leopold in 1908. It's a colonial legacy that remains deeply controversial and intensely scrutinized today.
Stepping into the 20th century, the nation's vulnerable geography once again placed it directly in the crosshairs of global conflict. This is Section 4, Surviving the World Wars.
It's hard to overstate the unimaginable devastation the country endured across 2 world wars. In 1914, even though Belgium had declared strict neutrality, Germany invaded them anyway just to get to France. The Western Front ended up stabilizing right in Belgian territory, near Ypres. Those trenches became the very symbol of modern warfare's horror, and it's where the world saw the first large-scale use of poison gas. Then, in 1940, tragedy struck again. Belgium was occupied by Nazi Germany during World War II, facing devastating Holocaust deportations. But they also saw the rise of incredibly brave, strong local resistance movements. So you have a country shifting from a neutral state to a symbol of horrific suffering and ultimately a symbol of resilient resistance.
Emerging from the ashes of World War II, the nation made a pivotal decision to ensure that kind of devastation never happened on the continent again. This leads us to Section 5, Building Modern Europe.
Recognizing the catastrophic cost of war, Belgium totally flipped the script. They took a leading role in creating a new Europe based on cooperation instead of conflict. They literally transformed themselves from Europe's perennial battlefield into the diplomatic heart of the continent. Belgium became a founding member of both NATO and the European Economic Community, which of course evolved into the EU. Today, Brussels acts as the unofficial capital of the European Union, hosting the European Commission, the European Parliament, and NATO headquarters. Talk about a comeback story.
But who actually lives in this modern diplomatic hub? Today, Belgium's political reality is highly decentralized and split really tightly along linguistic lines. You have Dutch-speaking Flanders up in the north making up about 59% of the population, French-speaking Wallonia down south at 31%, bilingual Brussels right in the center, and even a small German-speaking community at about 1%. To manage these deep cultural differences, Belgium had to develop a highly complex, decentralized federal system, where power is very carefully divided.
And get this, because of those internal divisions and a multitude of political parties spanning these different regions, the country actually broke records for the longest government formation process in modern democracy. From 2010 to 2011, Belgium went over 500 days without forming a coalition government. 500 days. Yet, incredibly, the underlying system remained remarkably stable, and the day-to-day administration of the country just kept on ticking. It's a pretty wild testament to their unique political resilience.
But hey, beyond the heavy politics and conflict, this small nation has exported an absolutely massive amount of global culture. Let's look at our final section, Belgian culture and identity. From the serious halls of international diplomacy to the things that just make life fun, this small country's cultural influence is simply staggering. We're talking world-renowned chocolate craftsmanship from brands like Godiva and Neuhaus. Their beer culture is legendary, producing hundreds of varieties including those amazing UNESCO-recognized Trappist monastery beers. They have a massive comic book tradition that gave the world icons like Tintin and the Smurfs. They champion the waffle, they fiercely contest the invention of what we call French fries, insisting they're absolutely Belgian fries. And, no way, a Belgian named Adolphe Sax even invented the saxophone back in the 1840s.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this thought. Belgium isn't just a small European country. It's a place where the entire history of Europe is basically written across every street, battlefield, cathedral, and cafe. It survived invasions, occupations, and its own intense internal divisions to become both an economic and cultural powerhouse. So it really makes you wonder, can a multilingual nation defined by such a complex and fractured past actually serve as the ultimate blueprint for European unity? It's a fascinating question, and one well worth pondering as Belgium continues to quietly and loudly shape the future of the continent. Thanks for watching this explainer, and we'll catch you next time.